Hey guys, Michael the DC Multiverse Collector here, bringing you this review of the McFarlane Toys DC Multiverse Gold Label Animal Man. Now this is a gold label because in the United States it is, I believe, a Target exclusive. In Australia it is broadly available online at most retailers, and I was lucky enough to be sent this sample for review by Head Start Toys. A big thank you to Head Start for letting me bring you this review a little bit earlier than I otherwise would have. It's much appreciated. Now Animal Man I was really looking forward to. I have a real fondness for sort of B-list and C-list heroes and villains. I really love expanding the corners of my DC world, and this is a prime example. Buddy Baker, Animal Man, obscure, but like well known enough that I know of him, I know his design, I know what he can do, I know what he looks like, but not so well known that I've read that many stories involving him. So, you know, it's kind of that perfect fit between someone I know but kind of don't know that much about, and I always like the opportunity to learn more about characters when I get them in figure form. That's a fun opportunity and one of the boons and benefits of toy collecting a line like this. So anyway, we have Animal Man here in his box, and as you can see, the accessory spread looks really impressive. And let's get the elephant, or you know, Wolverine in the room out of the way. This looks really fun, this Wolverine. I can see a selection of hands. I can also see some fun stuff going on with the figure. Also a major drawback that I think you can probably all predict, one or two drawbacks, but let's see what we think of the figure overall. But before we do that, let's look at the packaging. Animal Man from the Human Zoo, and on the back we have some really nice artwork of Animal Man, and we're all thinking it. Yeah, he's got like his jacket, his iconic jacket, but he doesn't have it in the box, so that's kind of an interesting one. But anyway, I'm sort of here to review the figure that we get rather than the figure we don't get. So without any further ado, let's get Animal Man out of the box and see how cool he really is. Okay, so here's Animal Man out of the package with all his accessories spread on the table. As always, we'll get the boring stuff out of the way first. We get the standard DC Multiverse display stand. Thin, basic, boring, let's get it away. And let's have a look at our standard trading card. Here you'll see that really lovely art of Buddy Baker on the front, again with the jacket that doesn't exist on the figure, and the data file on the back. You can pause that and have a read about Animal Man Buddy Baker if you like. So those are nice to have as always, and here are the core accessories that we, really count. You'll see that we get this fantastic looking Wolverine, which we're going to get to in a minute. Give me a moment, I'll get to it. Trust me, we'll talk about the Wolverine. But first up, I want to note that we do get alternate hands, a really generous spread. For his left hand, we get a gesture hand, and we also get a gripping hand if you want to have him holding something, although there's nothing that he comes with to really hold. So those are alternate left hands. And you see, we also get some alternate right hands, which include a standard fist and a gesture hand. Though when you look at the figure and you see this excellent looking claw hand that he gets, I don't know why you would ever pose him without that, honestly. It's a big part of why this figure is unique and interesting, so I will not be replacing those hands anytime soon, because I love what he comes with out of the box. Anyway, moving on to the star of the show. Sorry buddy, it's this Wolverine. Now, this is really extra if you ask me. I think it's crazy that McFarlane included sort of, a scale animal as an accessory in this set. McFarlane's really been kind of loving the animal accessories lately. Beast Boy came with his sort of, eagle. This figure comes with a Wolverine. Superman came with Crypto. We're on an animal kick, and I'm here for it. I know this thing is nothing special. It kind of looks like one of those toys that you get sort of in bulk at, the Walmart, the Kmart. They're kind of kids' toys, and you kind of get a whole bucket of them, and there's like elephants and crocodiles and Wolverines. Like, it's just molded plastic, but I think it's full of charm. Like, I love its kind of crazy Wolverine face, but it's, it's also nicely painted. Like, the teeth are nicely painted, the tongue's painted, the eyes are painted, the fur has a bit of black applied in there to give it texture. This is good stuff for, like, a $20 action figure, or 22, or whatever, however much it costs now in the United States, 40 Australian dollars, mind you. But even so, when you compare it to the competition, I think that, what McFarlane's thrown in here with Animal Man, this Wolverine, the two pairs of extra hands, really, really exceeds anything that Marvel Legends have been coming with lately. Right now, it's very common to open a Marvel Legends, particularly on a retro card. If you buy any of the retro Spider-Man figures or retro X-Men figures on the card back, it's very common to open those up and there's literally just one set of extra hands if you're lucky, maybe one or two reused, overused, power effects that you've seen a million times, cheap, nasty little things, and that's about it for the same price. McFarlane's given us an animal sidekick here, which is, it's a hefty piece of plastic, for as simple as it is. And he's given us two sets of alternate hands. So in terms of accessories, I think this is a home run for Animal Man and for McFarlane Toys. So cannot complain on the accessories front. He over-delivers. So turning now to the figure itself, there's a lot to say about Animal Man, both good and bad, mostly good, luckily. In terms of the character himself, I think it's a really striking design. I wasn't really, familiar with that many Animal Man storylines. I've read a couple years ago, but I definitely know of him and I know his design. The elephant in the room here is that he's missing the iconic sort of denim jacket or the black denim jacket that so defines his silhouette, particularly in more modern times. I think if you ask most people to picture Animal Man or to close their eyes and really think about what Animal Man looks like, they would say that he would have the jacket. It gives him sort of that, the collar. It kind of gives him some distinctiveness, I think, rather than a guy in a jumpsuit. So it's a real shame that McFarlane didn't include the jacket here. And I think the large reason for that is simply a cost issue. It would have taken more money to sort of provide a resculpted torso that included the jacket on it. Even if it was just a plastic overlay, that would have worked. He might have then needed new jacket arms, I guess. So that was one option he could have gone with. It might have cost too much. Another option is cloth goods. He could have given us a cloth goods style jacket. I know that many people are choosing to buy third-party doll clothing like leather jackets off Amazon. I've seen a few up for sale that fit quite perfectly on this figure, and that's a valid choice too. McFarlane could have done that. It would have amped up the cost of the figure. I kind of understand why he didn't, because ultimately this design of Animal Man in this sort of more simple costume is valid. This is how he appears in the comics, on occasion. So it's a valid look for Animal Man. I just think most people would have preferred the jacket. That's the negative. The other negative I just want to point out is that we are seeing this on the Booster Gold Blue Beetle body buck that we've seen maybe now a dozen times in the line. It's kind of becoming McFarlane's de facto body buck for sort of medium-sized, more simpler spandex kind of covered figures. And it's okay. It's actually a really nice, well-proportioned body. The only problem with it is it's got these sculpted boots here. You see there's a sculpted boot line here, and so many figures that use this buck kind of just paint over the sculpt, and I'm just getting really sick of it. If McFarlane wants to use this body many, many times for different characters, I can actually support him, but why not give a lower leg piece that actually just doesn't have any sculpted detail on it at all, so that you can just paint the details instead of painting over. I really don't like this trend of painting over sculpt. It doesn't look great. Having said that, this instance here of the curved sort of design at the top of the boot doesn't look too bad because it's black, because it's all one color. At a distance, you kind of barely see it, and it's just about acceptable. So those are the two negatives. The only two negative things I will say about this figure are the lack of jacket, which is subjective, and painting over sculpt, which is not subjective. That's objectively just a bad design decision, and I wish we could get some alternate parts for the lower legs that would just avoid that issue. So now let's talk about what I love about the figure, which is just about everything else. First up, I love the colour that McFarlane has chosen. It's this sort of slightly mustardy yellow, which matches perfectly with how he appears in the comics. He's kind of a golden yellow that almost becomes orange, and this is just perfect. It's really bright and colourful. I like it. You'll see that parts of him are black. Sometimes in the comic that's kind of looking a bit more blue than black, but that's just sort of, I think, shading a lot of the time. Dark blue would have been a valid choice. I think black looks really good. Another thing I like is that this painted sort of decal here is applied really, really nicely. It's clean, it's bright, it's not messy, and if you sort of angle the articulation just right, it all joins up really nicely. Of course, the downside of a design like this is that as soon as you start messing with the articulation, it all falls apart and looks like a mess. But there's not really much you can do about that. I will say that maybe the paint should have continued a little bit further up the abdominal region so that when you arched him back, it didn't break it up as much. But, in for a penny, in for a pound, if you accept this sort of painted decal on the chest, it's going to get broken up by articulation. So yeah, the decal is actually really nicely applied. It's just going to work best if you keep him in a neutral pose with everything lined up, but that's just the nature of the beast. Not sure how you really avoid that. As you can see, that paint goes all the way around on the diaper piece, and it looks really, really nice. Another thing I think looks really, really nice is this hand. You'll see it is a brand new, unique, sculpted beast claw, and it just pegs in really nice, and it just looks really well detailed, nicely painted. It's got a little bit of a wash applied to it. Really evocative, and gives this guy a lot of extra personality. If he'd just come with a fisted hand, I think that would have taken a lot of the uniqueness and the edge off this character. This gives him some sort of spark on the shelf, and it livens up this otherwise sort of old hat body that we've seen, 10, 12 times. This is the sort of thing you want to see. When you're using an older buck like this that everyone's seen, so many times, you got to zhuzh it up with something interesting and fun, and McFarlane has done that, I think, with this really great hand on the right hand here. Another thing that McFarlane has done right is this head sculpt. Let's look at it. I think that head sculpt is amazing. The hair looks really good, sculpted really nicely. It's got a very, very subtle wash in it, which brings it sort of to life, brings the sculpted detail out. The expression is kind of good. It's sort of neutral, but it's not stoic. It's got a hint of a smile there, which is perfect. It gives you just enough personality, sort of just what you would want. The skin tones are really good. The lips are painted really well. And obviously, those goggles are painted beautifully. The gold trim around the edges is very precise, very perfect. And I love the sort of reflective blue and white paint in the lenses. It's so bright and dynamic, and it gives this figure some life. So more of this McFarlane. If you're going to give us this old body we've seen so many times, nail the head, give us some unique tweaks, like this hand, and I'm just about happy. I don't mind the reuse. It's actually really, really good, and you still get a really fun, dynamic, interesting looking figure. I'm not going to do a full articulation section for this guy because this is the Blue Beetle Booster Gold Body Buck. We've seen it 50,000 times. It articulates really, really well. Just about everything you would want it to do, it does, and Animal Man is no exception. Let's have a look at the head sculpt because that is unique. He looks down decently, and he looks up okay. Side to side rock, 360 degrees. Yeah, it's good. Really nicely articulated figure, a really nice looking figure. Obviously it's got that soft diaper piece, which allows for some really good arse continuity. This guy gets an arse continuity of 7 out of 10, solid stuff. So yeah, that is Animal Man. I'm very impressed, despite the objective flaws, and some more subjective flaws like the lack of jacket. I think this is a really, really strong release from McFarlane Toys. But yeah, Animal Man, I like him a lot. Let's do some comparisons. So here is Animal Man alongside Dead Man, Captain Atom, Blue Beetle, and Booster Gold. I think it's fair to say these are all B-list or C-list heroes, so they have that in common with Buddy Baker, but also you'll notice they are all using that same body buck, that Blue Beetle body buck. We've seen it many more times than this. This is just a sampling, but I think it's a nice representative sampling of how this body's been used over time. Obviously, it made its first appearance with the Blue Beetle Booster Gold 2-pack. There they are on the right. Fits them really, really nicely. You'll see that the boots were really designed for Blue Beetle, and with Booster Gold you can see they painted over the sculpt. That is the first time McFarlane painted over the sculpt, and unfortunately it wasn't the last time. You will see that for figures like Captain Atom, who just has blue boots, it works really, really well. What you'll also see though is that Captain Atom really doesn't do anything with this mold. It's just a straight up reuse of the mold with a slightly different diaper piece, and it's kind of just, cast in silver and painted emblem. Bob's your uncle. Kind of bland, a little bit boring. You compare that to Buddy Baker, and I think I really admire the way McFarlane has taken the buck and given it that really well done head sculpt and that exciting sort of animal hand, and all of a sudden you've got a point of difference and the figure looks really interesting. I think the grand example of that is Dead Man on the left. That is the same buck, but you'll see that he modified the torso to include that awesome collar. Obviously it has that ghostly sort of spectral accessory piece that pegs into the back. To me, that's the perfect reuse. He took the mold and he modified it where necessary to make it fit the character. And I would just say, I think, if he could modify the torso for Dead Man and give him that awesome collar to really match the comic book look, I think Buddy could have used a leather jacket. I'm just saying, sorry, a denim jacket rather. I'm just saying you could do it for one. He probably could have done it here, but what we get is pretty good. And I think these guys all look excellent in a lineup. And I think Animal Man is one of the better reuses of this mold overall. Next, we have Animal Man alongside the mega figure Swamp Thing. Now, I've had to pull the camera back because Swamp Thing is a beast of a mega figure, still one of the tallest mega figures McFarlane's ever made, and one of the best in my opinion. And I think these guys look really, really good together. Of course, they both have that same environmental, natural activism bent to them, particularly in the storylines involving them, and they have crossed paths on occasion, and I think they look really, really strong together. So despite a couple of flaws such as the lack of jacket and the paint over the sculpted boots, Animal Man is definitely one of my favourite figures of recent times. He's colourful, he's fun, he's weird, he's wild, and despite the fact that he's just a reuse of that Blue Beetle Booster Gold body, McFarlane Toys has added just enough fun, fresh stuff to make him exciting. The head sculpt is perfect, the beast hand is perfect, and I really think the colours match the source material really well. The extra hands are a nice touch, and of course, that Wolverine is just a whole lot of fun. There's really not a whole lot you can complain about with this guy other than those couple of flaws, and I think if you can look past those, you can't deny that he's an essential purchase, especially if you want to fill out your Justice League and your broader DC universe. So yes, clearly I wholeheartedly recommend Animal Man. If you're on the fence, I say buy him. We're unlikely to get an Animal Man figure again in this line or any other line for years to come, and I just think he's a whole lot of fun. He'll stand out on the shelf, people will ask who is that, and you'll get to explain to them the weird and wonderful world of Buddy Baker. So if you found this video helpful, interesting, enlightening or useful, why not give it a like? And if you haven't subscribed, please do. I'm asking you nicely. It's a small click for you, but it really helps me and I'd really appreciate it. Anyway guys, soon I'll have a review for you of the Nightfall Nightwing. There's a lot to talk about with that figure, so check it out. In the meantime, happy collecting. Thanks so much for watching.